Welcome to the 11th Hour Revelation channel. Have you ever stood before a crowd of thousands? Felt the weight of a sea of faces, stretching farther than your voice could reach? No mic, no speaker, no technology, just one man, standing on a hillside. And yet, 5,000 men heard him, clearly, deeply and unforgettably. This is not just a story, it's a mystery and a miracle. Imagine the scene. A dry, open landscape, the sun fierce, the air thick with dust and anticipation. 5,000 men, not counting women and children. Families hungry, not just for bread but for hope. They weren't gathered in an amphitheater. There were no stone walls to bounce sound, no hidden acoustics, just the open hills of Galilee. So how did he do it? How did one voice reach 10, 100, 1,000, 5,000, and more? Sit back and stick with us as we unravel the mystery of how Jesus spoke to 5,000 men without modern address system. Like and subscribe to this channel for more unveiling videos like this. It's a scene frozen in time. A vast, dusty hillside. A crowd larger than any modern gathering. Thousands of men, 5,000 to be exact, gathered together in the wilderness, hanging on every word from a man who had no microphone, no speaker, no modern technology to project his voice. Yet they heard him, clearly, intimately, as if he were speaking directly to each of them. How did this happen? How did he, without the tools we take for granted today, reach the ears and hearts of so many? Was it a miracle of acoustics, a natural phenomenon, or something far beyond human understanding? The mystery begins here, on a quiet hill, with nothing more than the voice of Jesus and the silence of those waiting. This was not a stage, not a microphone in sight. There were no public address systems, no booming speakers echoing the message. There was only the sound of his voice, and somehow, it reached the ears of thousands across the crowd. Imagine the scene. It's a hot day in the wilderness, dust swirling through the air. A sea of people, many tired, hungry, some likely irritated from the journey. Yet they listen intently. It's not the crowd's eagerness alone that holds them, but the power of his voice. They lean in not because they can't hear, but because the sound, the very resonance of his words, penetrates deep within them. How? How did they hear him, not just with their ears, but with their spirits? Was it the terrain, the hills that carry sound in a way we no longer appreciate? Was it the shape of the land, the natural acoustics that amplified his voice in ways we can't easily replicate today? Perhaps it was. The natural surroundings, with their unique features, could have played a role. It's said that hillsides, valleys, and open spaces can amplify sound in ways that defy our expectations. But this doesn't feel like the answer, does it? Because the more we ponder this moment, the more we begin to realize that it wasn't just the physical environment at play here. It wasn't just the natural acoustics of the land that allowed his voice to carry. No, there's something greater at work here. Something far beyond the laws of nature, beyond our understanding of sound and physics. What if the true miracle wasn't just the physical sound of his voice reaching 5,000 men, but the spiritual resonance of his words? What if the very voice of God, speaking through Jesus, transcended time and space in ways we cannot comprehend? The power of the spoken word is something we underestimate today. We take our microphones, our speakers, and our advanced technology for granted. But there was a time when words themselves were more than just sounds, they were vessels of divine power. When Jesus spoke, it wasn't just a message for the ears. It was a call to the soul. Could it be that this moment, when Jesus spoke to the 5,000, was not just about logistics but about something far deeper? Something that defies our modern understanding of communication, something that speaks to the very core of who we are. Let's step back for a moment and consider this. Jesus wasn't just speaking to the crowd. He was speaking to their hearts, their spirits. His words carried a frequency, a resonance, that reached beyond the limits of the physical world and into the divine. The crowd didn't just hear the sound of a man's voice, they felt the presence of God himself. Before we dive into the supernatural, let's consider the natural possibilities. After all, there must have been some factors at play in the physical world that allowed his voice to reach the crowd in the way it did. One possibility is simple: the terrain itself. The hill where Jesus stood, surrounded by open land and sparse vegetation, could have amplified sound in a way we no longer experience today. The natural acoustics of a large, open space, with the crowd gathered in front of him, may have allowed the sound of his voice to travel much farther than we would expect. It's a known fact that hillsides, valleys, and amphitheaters have an almost uncanny ability to amplify sound. In ancient times, these natural features were carefully chosen for gatherings, knowing that the land itself could enhance a speaker's voice. Could this have been the case here? Perhaps. But it's important to remember, this was no ordinary crowd. These were people who had traveled long distances, through harsh terrain to hear Jesus. They weren't standing in a stadium. They were spread across a hillside, gathered on uneven ground with no clear focal point. The sound of his voice would have had to penetrate through all of this, overcoming the natural challenges of such a setting. And yet, despite all of these challenges, the noise of the crowd, the vastness of the space, the harsh conditions, the people heard him. Not just heard but understood. The clarity of his message didn't get lost in the wind, the distance, or the distractions. It cut through the noise and reached the deepest parts of their hearts. Is this a miracle of acoustics? Was it the environment itself that miraculously amplified his voice? Or was it something more? As we explore the natural possibilities, we can't ignore the most compelling question of all. Was this simply an effect of the environment, or was there something far greater at play? The more we contemplate this moment, the more we begin to realize that the true power of Jesus' voice was not just in the sound it produced, but in the divine force behind it. What if Jesus' voice transcended the limits of natural sound? What if the miracle wasn't just the amplification of sound, but the power of the very word itself? Consider this, Jesus was not just any man. He was the Logos, the Word made flesh. The same word that spoke creation into being. The very essence of God himself. When he spoke, the laws of nature were not the only thing in motion. The divine was at work. The same voice that calmed the storm and raised the dead was now reaching into the hearts and minds of 5,000 men. Could it be that when Jesus spoke, his voice didn't just travel through the air, it traveled through time and space, piercing the hearts of each listener no matter how far away they stood? His voice was not merely heard by the ears. It was received by the soul. It was a message not bound by the physical realm, but a call from heaven itself. The Word of God does not rely on human limitations. It cannot be confined to the bounds of space or time. It reaches where it needs to go, and it always finds its mark. The power of the spoken word is something we often underestimate. In our modern world, we've become so accustomed to technology amplifying our voices that we forget the ancient truth. Words have power. Real power. When Jesus spoke, he wasn't just using words, he was speaking life. He was releasing divine energy, transforming the atmosphere with every syllable. In the beginning, God spoke, and creation responded. When Jesus spoke, the crowd didn't just hear. They felt. His words were an extension of the divine. They carried the weight of eternity in them. His voice was the voice of creation itself. And just like that, as he stood on the hill, Jesus was not just speaking to those 5,000 men. He was speaking to all of humanity, to all of creation, to the very core of existence. Every word was alive. Every word was healing. Every word was transformative. And so, the mystery of how he spoke to 5,000 without a microphone is not simply about sound. It's about the power of the divine word, the power that spoke those men into life and called them into truth. It's about the presence of God that went beyond the physical, beyond our understanding. In the end, we're left with this truth. Jesus' voice was never about the tools we rely on. It was about something greater, something eternal, something that can't be contained by microphones, speakers, or any other technology we've created. His voice was the voice of the Creator. And when he spoke, it carried across time and space, reaching the hearts of all who would listen. That's the real mystery. Not how he did it, but that he did. And that, my friends, is a message that still resonates with us today. Thank you for walking through this mystery with us. If you felt the power in these words, if your spirit was stirred, then stay connected. Like this video. Subscribe to the channel and share as you join us again as we unveil the untold depths of truth and wonders of the Word of God. Thank you for watching and see you soon.